Hi students, you are welcome in Literature Simply, simple way to learn literature and language. Students, in this tutorial we are going to discuss a new literary theory called eco-criticism. And let me first make an outline of this tutorial. First we will talk about American eco-criticism. Then second we will talk about British green studies. Number 3, we will discuss the prominent features of eco-criticism or the prominent elements in eco-criticism. And at the end we will talk about what eco-critics do, a very useful section from Peter Barry's beginning theory. So friends, let's start the tutorial. Now, when we look at the term eco-criticism, we find that this term have two nomenclature. One is eco-criticism and the other is green studies. Now, eco-criticism is particularly in America. The term is used often in America, and green studies is used in Britain or in UK. So let's see first how it has been originated in America. When we look at eco-criticism, a term in America or a concept, we find that this concept has been revolved in America in 1980s. But friends, here according to Michael P. Branch, the roots of this eco-criticism can be stressed long before. In 1974, in the writing of William Rueckert, he composed a collection of essays called Literature and Ecology, Experiment in Eco-Criticism, which is published in 1974. And according to him, according to Branch, this concept for the first time is used by William Rueckert. The similar term called ecology is used by a prominent US eco-critic, Karl Kroeber, in his article Home at Grasmere, Ecological Holiness, published in 1974. Now here we have two terms, eco-criticism and ecology. Eco-criticism is, according to Branch, used by William Rueckert, and ecology is used by Karl Kroeber. But friends, this term eco-criticism is revived by Cheryl Gladfelty, an American eco-critic, and when she was a graduate student at Cornell University, she attended a conference of Western Literature Association, and from there she gained this concept of eco-criticism, and later she built this concept of eco-criticism and studied this field of theory in detail. And she also urged, when she became a professor, she urged to the literary world that this term should be included in the theory of literature or in the theory of criticism. And then we find that this term became very popular. So the credit should be given to Cheryl Gladfelty for the foundation of this eco-criticism, a new branch in literary criticism. We find that Cheryl Gladfelty and Harold Fromm edited a collection of essays in 1996 called The Eco-Criticism Reader, Landmarks in the Literary Ecology. In this particular collection, they developed the theory of eco-criticism, or in a way we can say that they developed this field of eco-criticism and wrote details about this criticism. Again, the contribution of Cheryl Gladfelty to this theory of eco-criticism is great. She co-founded an association in 1992 called Association for the Study of Literature and Environment. Briefly, it is called as ASLE, and it has its own journal called Interdisciplinary Studies in Literature and Environment, or ISL or IL, we can briefly call it. Friends, this journal and association contributed in the development of eco-criticism, and this credit must be given to Cheryl Gladfelty. So according to Cheryl Gladfelty, the very simple definition of eco-criticism is that it is nothing but the study of literature and environment. So there is correspondence between literature and environment, and that should be explored in eco-criticism, is the very base of this eco-criticism. And friends, here in eco-criticism we find that there are three major authors or writers who made the foundation for this eco-criticism, or who are considered most significant writers for this eco-criticism in America. The very first we have Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote a book called Nature in 1936, and in this book we find that particularly he builds the empire on nature, or how nature is significant, or everything is rotates around the nature in this book called Nature. The very title of this book is Nature. The second significant writer in this eco-criticism, or the who created a base for this eco-criticism, is Margaret Fuller, and she wrote a very comprehensive kind of book called Summer at Lakes during 1948. This is the title of her book, and in that book she describes the landscapes in America. For example, there is a landscape of Niagara Falls, and when she visits this Niagara Falls, she very uh, attentively describes her experience, her mental experience about that Niagara Falls. So in this foundation series, the third major American writer, we have Henry David Thoreau, and he also wrote a book called Walden. This book is later published in 1999, and these three books and three writers are considered as the base for this eco-criticism in America. So this is the scene of American eco-criticism. Now friends, let's move to the second point, that is British Green Studies, or the scene of eco-criticism in UK. Actually, many eco-critics have claimed that this eco-criticism is existed before the term eco-criticism is used, and here they refer to the Romantic Age, that is from 1798 to 1832. According to them, there are many concerns about nature and ecology in the writings of the writers from this Romantic Age. They give example of William Wordsworth, Shelley. They also cite an example of Elegy written in a country churchyard by Thomas Gray, and they say that there is setting of nature in these writers' works, in the poetry of these writers or these poets, or the works of these writers. So this concept already existed there in the Romantic Age, according to many eco-critics. So this concerns about ecology and nature is found in the book of Raymond Williams, The Country and City, which is written in 1973, and in that book he talks about the concerns of ecology and nature very prominently, and hence many eco-critics in Britain claim that the concerns of this ecology has been already there before the use of term eco-criticism. When we think about this green studies, the very nomenclature called green studies is famous in Britain or in UK, and we find that there are many courses based on this green studies and eco-criticism which are offered for undergraduate and postgraduate students, and there are many eco-critics, or there are many professors who teach or taught this eco-criticism or green studies in various colleges or in various universities. This scene is not seen in the America. So this is the very prominent thing in the green studies in Britain. So here we find a very significant collection of essays by a very famous eco-critic, Lawrence Cook, who taught in many universities in Britain, and he composed this collection of essays called The Green Studies Reader from Romanticism to Eco-Criticism, which is recently published in 2000. And in that particular book, we find that the development of these green studies in Britain very elaborately discussed. Now friends, if we think about this eco-criticism and green studies, we find that it is the theories like new historicism and cultural materialism. So as we found that cultural materialism is a counterpart to new historicism in Britain, and in the same way here we also find that we can say in a way that it is also, green studies is also a counterpart to the eco-criticism from America, because here we find that there is no dedicated journal or a dedicated workforce on this eco-criticism in Britain, which is borrowed from America. So the same journal is here we find in Britain, IL or ASL, Interdisciplinary Studies of Literature and Environment. This journal's branch is there in the Britain. We have a very prominent comparative statement regarding American eco-criticism and British green studies. Let's read this statement and understand if there is any difference between these two movements from two nations. Generally, the preferred American term is eco-criticism, whereas green studies is frequently used in the UK, and there is perhaps a tendency for the American writing to be celebratory in tone, occasionally degenerating into what harder left critics disparagingly call tree hugging, whereas the British variant tends to be more mandatory, that is, it seeks to warn us of environmental threats emanating from governmental, industrial, commercial, and neo-colonial forces. For instance, Bates' more recent book, The Song of the Earth, argues that colonialism and deforestation have frequently gone together. So friends, here we find a very prominent difference between these two movements from two regions. In Britain or in British Green Studies, we find that there is concern regarding the nature, and they talk or they warn us about the devastation of nature, and this thing is not find in the eco-criticism in America. So this is the great difference between these two movements according to Peter Barry, because in Green Studies we find that they warn us, or he provides an example that deforestation and the colonization goes hand in hand or gone together. Now friends, let's move to the third part. What are the prominent elements in eco-criticism, or what are the prominent features of eco-criticism? The very first thing, that as we have seen that many theories are said they have social constructed or linguistically constructed, and this notion is rejected by eco-critics. According to them, there is a great force in the nature, and whatever happens, it happens according to nature, and we cannot go beyond the force of nature. So they give excessive importance to the nature, and they reject the notion of social or linguistic constructedness. This is the first feature of eco-criticism. The second feature, here we have a statement, very popular statement, which is frequently quoted by Kate Soper in What is Nature. This statement occurred in What is Nature, a very prominent book in eco-criticism. The statement goes like, it isn't language which has a hole in its ozone layer. So friends, if we analyze this statement, it isn't the language which has a hole in ozone layer, the tone of this statement is directly to the nature, and it also refers to the language. So language is not so significant according to eco-critics, but the nature. And they directly says that it is not the language which made the hole in the ozone layer, but it is the devastation of nature, it is the deforestation, it is the global warming which made the hole in the ozone layer. So there is the direct comparison between language and the forces of nature or the devastation of nature. So this is prominent second feature. The third feature we have, this theory is a major intervention in the theories of humanities, and as we have seen that it is rejected the social constructedness. In the same way, it also rejects the traditional theories in the humanities, and it has its own kind of implementations in the field of literature, and hence here we find the rejection of social constructedness and linguistic constructedness. So it also challenged these theories in the humanities. For example, till today we have discussed many theories from the theories based in language or theories based in the social constructedness. For example, we have feminism, we have Marxism, we have deconstruction, structuralism, post-structuralism. All these notions are challenged in this theory, and it has give new perspectives in the literature and in the very literary criticism. So this is the third feature or element. The fourth feature we have, there are many heating debates among eco-critics and linguists and other critics. According to linguists or social critics, that this kind of criticism, this kind of theory naturalizes the inequality. Now in this last feature we find that there is agreement between eco-critics and other critics, and there is a middle way. According to many, there is close correspondence between eco-criticism and the other theories which are based on the social kind of things and the linguistic kind of things, or language or society. And friends, this relationship will help to enhance the theory in literature, and both theories should be given equal importance is one of the tone which is arised from some critics, some eco-critics and the other critics. So this is the last prominent feature we can say, and through this feature or element we find a middle path, a accepting path for all in this eco-criticism. Now friends, let's move to the last section, that is what eco-critics do. The very first thing they do, they reread major literary works from an ecocentric perspective with particular attention to the presentation of the natural world. Now it is very obvious, whenever eco-critics analyze any text, they find the ecological concerns and the elements which are found in the nature, the setting, characters, etc. Many kinds of things. For example, forest or what kind of elements of nature are presented in that particular book. The second thing they do, they extend the applicability of a range of ecocentric concepts, using them of things other than the natural world. Now they use many concepts in this eco-criticism. For example, energy, the nature, then we have sustainable, unsustainable use of energy, mutuality, symbiosis, many kinds of things they use in this eco-criticism. The third thing we have, they give special canonical emphasis to writers who foreground nature as a major part of their subject matter. Now this is very obvious, as we have seen that there are three major writers who made the foundation for this eco-criticism in America: Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, and Henry David Thoreau. In the same way, they analyzes this kind of text which foreground or background the nature prominently. Number 4, they extend the range of literary critical practice by placing a new emphasis on relevant factual writing, especially reflective topographical materials such as essays, traveling writing, memoirs, and regional literature. They also consider the new forms of writing, for example, memoirs, regional literature, essays, then travel writing. They give more importance to travel writing and memoirs, which foregrounds the nature in its writing. Number 5, they turn away from social constructivism and linguistic determinism of dominant literary theories and instead emphasize ecocentric values of meticulous observation, collective ethical responsibility, and the claims of the world beyond ourselves. Now in the last point, they reject the social constructiveness and the linguistic determinism, and they emphasis on the study of nature, on the study of ecology, on the study of concerns in the nature, and the relationship of nature and human beings with literature. So the medium is literature. Now these kind of things are analyzed in eco-criticism. So friends, this is all about eco-criticism. I am sure you might have understood all these terms in this eco-criticism. Still you find any problem, please comment below. I will answer to your comments. So thank you very much for watching the complete tutorial. Please like this video, share this video among your friends, and subscribe to Literature Simply, and don't forget to press the bell notification icon.